webinar today along with a third year who is going to be joining us in a second. Just some housekeeping. If everyone can keep their mics on mute while we're talking, just so we don't get any interruptions, and any questions, put them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. So unfortunately, probably won't be able to answer many questions as we go along, but hopefully at the end we'll have a nice Q&A session and you guys can ask whatever you want. Okay, so we'll just get started in a couple more seconds. But yeah, feel free to put questions that you have as we go along in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. I think we should have Kieran with us now. So I think he's just having a couple issues joining. Okay, so while we're just waiting for Kieran, what we'll do is if anyone has any burning questions they want to get out of the way before we begin, pop them in the chat now and I can answer them while we're waiting for Kieran to come. So anyone have any questions before we begin? A question in the chat. What resources do you recommend for interview prep? So, resources for interview prep, definitely kind of current health articles, like off the BBC Health section, or even thinking about things that are currently being produced by Imperial in terms of research. If you have any specific interest or anything that links to your work experience, dropping in a bit of Imperial research really does come across really nicely. I can see a few more questions coming in the chat, and we'll talk a bit more about interview prep later on, but I think now Kieran is here. So Kieran, you just want to say hello?
Oh yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kieran. I'm a third year from Imperial, so it's nice to meet you all, and hopefully you guys enjoy the webinar and find it useful, I guess. But yeah, nice to meet you all. I'll be talking shortly more as well.
Okay, amazing. So if we just get started by introducing how the session is going to be structured. So we're going to obviously start by talking about interviews. So some of you might have your interview coming up, or if you're in year 12, that'll be next year. So obviously quite a lot of changes to interviews this year compared to previously, like it's the first year doing in-person interviews, and there's also a couple of changes to the station, so we'll be covering all of that. Talking a little bit about Imperial's core structure and why Imperial. So you can obviously have that question where they ask, why do you want to come to Imperial? So we'll talk you through a little bit about how you might be able to answer that and some points you can make. And then we'll go through a few MMI scenarios, talk a bit more about life at Imperial, just giving you our perspective of how it is so far and different opportunities you have available to you here, and then a Q&A at the end. So let's get started by talking about Imperial interviews. So first of all, if we just kind of cover the 6 stations, we have teamwork and leadership, motivation to study medicine, understanding the role of a doctor, empathy and breaking bad news, ethics and values related scenarios, as well as data interpretation, which is brand new for this year. So thinking about the main things we're going to be marked on, there are 6 points for content, so what you say, those are the actual points you make in relation to these stations. And then you have 4 points for communication, which is how you say it. And now that the interviews are in person, there are a lot more components that might contribute towards these 4 communication points, like your body language, like the way you come across as a person your demeanor, the way you kind of interact with the interviewer. Obviously online, because first, like previously we've had virtual interviews, that was definitely still important, but now it's in person. That initial impression you make definitely has more effect and impact on the way that the interviewers kind of interpret your answers and you as a person. Because obviously, to be a doctor in medicine, you need to have a pretty good personality, be pretty personable. So those are all things they're assessing in that communication station. So thinking about the things that you can be assessed on, obviously they've given you these pretty descriptive stations. So make sure that you have examples ready of times where you've demonstrated teamwork, leadership, and those main skills. And also thinking about situations where you might have seen these skills in a medical scenario. So maybe if you've seen a doctor demonstrate leadership or teamwork or empathy, having those sort of up your sleeve is really, really important. You can apply both where you've demonstrated it and where you've seen it in a hospital setting to a very large variety of interview questions. And it's important to have those ready to go so that you're not kind of thinking on the spot, because that is kind of hard to conjure up in the moment. So yeah, moving on from this slide, Kieran, if you want to explain a little bit about the structure of the interview.
Yeah, so this year, for the first year since COVID, all the interviews are kind of in person. And obviously, with the 6 stations that you just listed, you'll go through those in kind of an MMI circuit format. Each station overall is 5 minutes long, and that includes the 1 minute kind of reading and thinking time. And then between the stations, you have 2 minutes to kind of reset and think about the next station. I think with an in-person MMI, I think it's really important to kind of see each station as a reset, as each one's marked independently of each other. So even if you do one station, like let's say teamwork and leadership, and it's the worst station you've ever done in your life, or you think that it might be, make sure you see the next one, i.e., say for motivation for medicine, see that as a reset and kind of start again and try and get the points, as you can only gain marks in an interview, not lose them. So don't worry too much if you kind of make mistakes. I think we're not looking for like a perfect person, or else like what would there be to teach you what needs to go to medical school? We just want to see potential, that you have potential to kind of be a good doctor and a good medical student that would be like fun to teach and engage with their curriculum. So that's what I'd say for interviews in general, I'd say. So yeah.
Amazing. So moving on to a few more top tips. So obviously previously it was online. So we were kind of recommending to kind of be familiar with the software they're using and make sure that you don't have any technical issues. But that's all out the way, and there are more, I guess, issues to focus on, like making sure that your body language is really quite professional. Professionalism is something they put quite a big emphasis on at Imperial, so making sure that you're dressed appropriately, you're not sort of giving either unenthusiastic or unprofessional, I guess, in an almost rude way. Like try to be really engaged, enthusiastic, and interact with the interviewers in a really almost impersonating the medical student or the doctor that you want to be in the future. So that element is going to become more important now that it's in person. And thinking about expanding on that in terms of your animation. So obviously don't try and incorporate this because we told you to, but if you're somebody that naturally uses hand gestures to kind of express yourself, then that is something that makes you come across as very enthusiastic and also a bit more confident. But if you're not really somebody who uses hand gestures very often, don't try and implement it now. Just think about maybe how you can also consider your tone of voice and removing things like filler words, things like gaps. Obviously, if you are stuck on what to say, just say, please have a moment to think, or I just need a minute to think about this, but try not to compensate by either waffling, having gaps, or filler words. So try and, come across as very confident, very enthusiastic, and very happy to be there. Obviously, there's going to be a massive element of nerves, and I think nerves are probably going to be a bigger element now that it's in person. However, try to stay calm, be confident, because you want to come across as somebody who is prepared and somebody who knows exactly what they're doing there. So fake it till you make it, but try not to come across as nervous or underconfident. And there might be an element of imposter syndrome or feeling like you don't belong, but you have earned your interview, you've earned your place at Imperial. So all you have to do now is prove it. Moving on to structure. So I said before, trying to compensate for not knowing what to say next with a whole load of waffle. Like I always tell people, it's better to say, a few small, well expanded points than say loads and loads of points that you're just thinking of one after the other on the spot. So if you only have two or three well rounded points for a question, that is completely fine. You might have a bit of time left over, but just stop there. It's better to stop and let the interviewer either prompt you further or ask you a follow up question than it is for you to waffle on about God knows what, and they can tell exactly when you're thinking of things on the spot. Comes across as underconfident, comes across as underprepared, and obviously your points aren't going to be of very good quality. So if you finish your answer, just stop talking as it can cause more harm than benefit. And then thinking about the genuine enthusiasm and passion we've spoken about already. And linking back to the nerves element, some people can talk really, really fast if they're nervous. So try and be mindful of the speed of your speech. Again, that's an element of the confidence. And circling back, Imperial already knows that you're smart because obviously you've got the grades, you've got UCAT. They want to see your personality and your potential to become a good doctor. And obviously, such a massive aspect of medicine is the way that you interact with people and ensuring that you're confident enough to come across as a, you know, knowledgeable medical professional to patients. So if you're unsure of what you're saying or don't have that belief in yourself, that is basically a red flag to them that this person can't be a good doctor. So make sure you really present yourself as the person and the doctor that you want to evolve into over your time at medical school. Kieran, do you have anything to add on this or any other top tips?
I feel like you covered everything. I did think of something, but I kind of forgot what I was gonna say. I guess maybe like I think in the interview itself, like they try to make it as relaxed as possible, and there's lots of like student helpers around. So I think you should speak to them, see about their experience at Imperial, and just try and be as relaxed as possible. And yeah, maybe speak to other candidates as well. It can be good to like kind of I guess you're like all mutually kind of nervous, so it's kind of good to speak to other people as well. And yeah, I think just as well, someone mentioned as well with the time pressure of the interview as well. I think in Imperial specifically, there's quite a lot of questions in a short span of time. So I think you should practice trying to be as concise as possible. For example, when you're talking about your teamwork examples, try and make the backstory of like what the situation was as brief as possible, like 1 to 2 sentences max, and then try to focus more on the reflection element, as that's kind of where all the points are to be gained is from like your ability to reflect upon your experiences and what you've kind of done, like your work experience, your volunteering. So yeah, and I think don't overthink and think, oh, they want me to come across this way or they want me to answer a question in a certain way. Just be yourself, as they want to know about your perspective and your viewpoint and your experiences. So it's your interview, so make it your own. And yeah, that's what I'd say for the interview tips.
Really good point at the end about being yourself. Like as I said, if you don't normally use the hand gestures, then don't start doing it now. It's going to come across as inauthentic. So just being yourself and projecting the best possible version of you is exactly what we want. So a couple more top tips here, which are a bit more related to the content of your answers. So always link back to medicine and work experience or volunteering examples. So if they say, describe a time where you have demonstrated good leadership, then make sure that you are talking about a time that is authentic. So you are actually able to explain it without it sounding fabricated. And at the end, thinking about your structure of STAR, so situation, task, action, response, and reflection. That reflection part should always link back to medicine, thinking about the impact that a similar skill would have in a clinical setting. So trying to make sure that you are sort of conveying why you think that these skills are going to form you into a good clinician. So thinking about the ethical questions, this could be something to do with euthanasia, abortion, vaccine hesitancy, anything around those sort of issues. It could link to current affairs as well. So thinking about those ethical pillars, they form a really good foundation in terms of the structure that you can follow and also making sure you're covering a wide variety of different topics in your ethical answers. And if Kieran, you want to talk about the last couple points?
Yeah, I'd say just build a rapport with the interviewer. Ask them how they are, greet them, just be nice to them generally. Be polite and courteous as well. And like sometimes in certain like ethical or professionalism questions, sometimes they might withhold certain information from you, and they might provide information that kind of challenges your pre-existing thoughts or your existing thought process. I think it's important to kind of express like if your opinion changes, why it changed, and try and be reflective upon the information that's given to you as the question kind of develops and they give you more information about it. So that's what I'd say for the last two. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess we have a couple of practice MMI questions. So I don't know if any of you guys in year 13 have any interviews coming up and would like to just practice a quick kind of run through of an Imperial style question, maybe. So maybe if you want to put your hand up in the chat, and me and Akshita and I can give you some feedback on your answer as well, and we can do it in like a time pressure kind of situation. Does anybody feel comfortable doing that, maybe just to have a go at practice? It's like a safe environment. Like it's okay to make mistakes and stuff. It's very stressful with like a lot of people, I guess. So it's okay if you make mistakes. It's just a learning opportunity to kind of get some feedback on your answers. So yeah.
You can either unmute or put your hand up in the chat. Um, Sorry, is it Yakub? I think you've just messaged me. Feel free to unmute if you want to have a go at answering the question.
Jakob.
Jakob, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet
So, if Karen, you want to introduce this station.
Yeah, so this will be an ethical station. And yeah, these are the three questions that we're going to answer in the 5 minutes. So I just got a timer on my phone for 5 minutes. So I'll give you a minute to think about it, and then I'll get you to answer the three questions in about a minute. So I'll start the timer now and just have a minute to think about the question. Is that okay?
Okay, no worries.
Cool. Okay, I'll start it now. And I'll tell you when to answer. So yeah, just have a think about the question. Okay, feel free to start answering whenever you're ready. Jakob.
Okay, thank you for the question. So I'll start off with the first question, the ethical considerations. So I think this is a really challenging situation. You've been treating Ms. Jones, and the things you have to consider would be firstly with professional integrity, dealing with issues relating to conflict of interest, but then also non-maleficence, so breaking down that patient-doctor relationship, and I'll get into each one. Starting off with professional integrity, regarding the conflict of interest, if she's given you a gift to thank you for your help, I would say that depending on the kind of size of the gift, depending on the cost of it, it can impair your objectivity when you're dealing with patients, and this relates to the ethical pillar of justice. If there's a conflict of interest, you won't be able to uphold that pillar, and you might treat Miss Jones a bit differently than the other patients, and this goes against the GMC. The next ethical consideration would be non-maleficence. So you've treated Miss Jones, you've built up that really good patient-doctor relationship, and she's trusted you. Now, how it relates to non-maleficence is that if you refuse that gift, especially in a way that's not polite, you may break down that trust and that patient-doctor relationship. She'll trust you less, and later she may be less open to you, less vulnerable, so you can't pick up those red flags as easily to make a diagnosis, to help in the future. But then also she might be less compliant in medical treatment and advice. So how might I approach Ms. Jones? I'd say the first thing that I would try to do is be as empathetic as possible, understand her perspective. She's thanking me for my help, and I would be polite. I would acknowledge this gift. I'd say, thank you so much. I really appreciate this token of gratefulness. But I would also have to uphold the GMC's value of the duty of candor by being open and honest to her. I would let her know that, unfortunately, I can't accept this gift personally because it would kind of create a conflict of interest between me and you and the other patients. The next thing that I would do would maybe signpost her to other resources. So I could, for example, let her know that maybe you could give us a gift card as a card, just to let us know that you're thankful. Maybe you could donate to a charity. that is related to your previous illness. And then finally, I'd say this is a really challenging situation. Of course, I would document any issues relating to patient safety. For example, in my work experience, I saw the Datix system, which is an incident reporting system, which you can use. And then finally, I would, if this is a really challenging situation, I would follow the GMC's guidance on knowing the limits to my own competence and maybe signpost her to another senior colleague who can better explain this to her. Now, should doctors accept gift from patients? I would say it depends on the cost, of course. For example, you can have maybe a gift card and flowers, or you could have perhaps thousands of pounds, and this would instill a conflict of interest. So I would say overall, it really depends on the cost. Doctors should accept gifts from lower values, so flowers, to really thank the patient. I mean, let the patient thank you. But then on the other hand, if you accept those gifts that are higher values, then it could create a conflict of interest. The patient will, you'll be more inclined to treat that patient differently. So I would say on one hand you could, on the other hand you couldn't. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Sure. You have about 10 seconds left. So do you have anything else to add, or I don't know? I guess you're running out of time now. But yeah, really good job for that answer. How did you find that question?
I found it okay. I'd say the last question I was like waffling on a bit, but yeah, overall it was okay.
Yeah, no, I think you had a really good structure, very clear communication, and a really good awareness of kind of empathy, and how you might approach this particular patient. And I really like linked to the work experience and the Datix as well. And you had a really clear and good understanding of the GMC guidelines as well. Yeah, well done. And I think one thing, maybe misconception, is about referencing the duty of candor. I think that specifically applies to kind of doctors making mistakes, as opposed to kind of just being honest. So it's about being honest, and doctors make mistakes. So it might have potentially been misused here. And I think you had good timekeeping as well. Like you were perfectly to the time. And maybe another point you could mention would be to kind of maybe look at that particular hospital's or particular GP's policy about gifts, as it might specify that you might be able to kind of accept gifts from patients. So that could be maybe a nuance that you could add as well. I don't know, actually, do you have any other feedback for him?
I think overall, like communication wise, it was pretty fluent. You didn't really force much, or it didn't seem like your thoughts were being generated on the spot, which was really, really good. And quite a confident tone of voice as well, which always comes across really nicely. And I liked how you summarized it sort of at the end to just wrap it up and show that kind of clarity in your thinking, so that you have been keeping track of the points you're making, or just waffling on. So I think that was really good overall.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we can move on now.
Brilliant.
We'll do this
Yeah.
next one, then just go. What do you want to do this one? Maybe, I don't know, if you have time. But yeah.
I think if we have time at the end, we'll come back to the second station. But for now, let's move on to why Imperial. So both Karen and I, obviously I've been here, it's my second year, this is third year, so we have taken part in sort of quite a wide variety of different activities at Imperial, and have had quite different experiences with Imperial between us. So we can definitely give some insight on our thoughts of the course and the opportunities available here. So if we just kind of start off by thinking about, if they ask you why Imperial, there are three main things you can mention, which are the course structure, extracurriculars, and location. So starting off with course structure, if Karen, you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, I mean, this applies to kind of any university, kind of wider university question, but I guess there's a wide variety of different kind of course structures that are kind of available to you. So some places have a more traditional structure, like UCL, where you have the kind of 3 years preclinical and then 3 years clinical placements. Whereas, for example, at Imperial, we kind of have a more integrated course where you kind of have that kind of blend of the preclinical sciences, as well as kind of having that early clinical exposure. So, for example, I think in first year, actually, we did like an 8-week long GP placement. And we also had a 2-week hospital placement as well. So alongside our kind of traditional lectures and getting all that kind of science content into our brains, as well as some universities offer intercalation. So that's a chance to kind of do another degree outside of medicine. So for me, I'll be doing that in my 4th year or next year. And yeah, and sometimes you have like TBLs, like team-based learning lectures, where you kind of work in your tutorial groups to kind of answer problems together, and also you do some exams in your groups as well. And then sometimes as well, especially more in third year now that I'm in clinical year, there's some case-based learning as well. So there'll be a patient case, and we'll talk through a particular case, and then kind of come up with our kind of diagnosis, what we think the patient could have based on their kind of symptoms and stuff. So I say at Imperial the course is quite varied, and it's like I feel like at Imperial no day is the same. Like every day is very different. Like one day you can have like a 9 to 5 of lectures, the next day you're doing a lab project or something. So it's very like varied. Like no day's the same. So I quite like that aspect of it as well for me personally. But yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about some extracurriculars that you've done as well. Too.
Yeah, so I mean, adding on to Kieran's point, I also really appreciate the fact that every day is so different and it adds a lot of variety. Doesn't let things get boring, basically. Thinking about extracurriculars, so some of you might know that Imperial actually has the largest number of societies in the entire country. So lots and lots of opportunities to explore niche interests, mainstream interests. So really, really like loads of things to get involved in, depending on whatever you are interested in, and all of the options are available on Imperial's website if you want a couple of examples to include in your interview answers. There's definitely lots of sports societies. So the way that Imperial is structured, we have our ICSM team, so the medical school sports teams, as well as the IC team, so the rest of the college effectively. Imperial's medical school is a little bit separate from the rest of the college. So we have our own campus in Hammersmith near the Charing Cross Hospital. And we also have our own societies for a lot of things, like our own sports teams, as I've mentioned, as well as a lot of academic societies within the medical school. So it tends to form a nice little bubble. But there's definitely lots of opportunity to interact with the rest of the college as well, if that is something you want to do. Cultural societies at Imperial, I'd say, are massive. So personally, I've engaged a lot in dance, and I've done a competition, an interviewing competition in Bollywood dance, and that was something that was a really good experience for me in first year. And also thinking about the ability to kind of help others across the board at Imperial. There's a lot of brag, so raising and giving, and there's lots of events and stuff that they put on, so you can get involved in that. There's a lot of charity opportunities that occur as well. And in terms of outreach, you can also think about helping other incoming medical students, either by tutoring them for their exams, or also thinking about helping widening participation students in school currently, so sixth formers. So lots of opportunity for that, and also things within academic societies, like for pediatrics, we have Play Team and Teddy Bear Hospital, which are 2 volunteering opportunities where with Play Team you go into hospitals and play with the kids on the wards, and with Teddy Bear Hospital you go into schools and help improve health literacy in children. So lots and lots of variation in what you can get involved in. And if we think about the location, there's a certain social aspect to it as well as a more academic aspect. So if you are someone who likes a busy city, I mean, these probably aren't points you would make, like this point specifically of the social aspect, probably not something you would emphasize a lot in the interview. But if you're someone who likes a big city, a multicultural city, and lots of things to do, then Imperial is a really, really good place to come. Really nice location. And thinking about a more interview framed answer, definitely thinking about the work life balance aspect of things. So linking that back to medicine subtly, thinking about how, because Imperial's hospitals are primarily situated in northwest London, definitely a very ethnically diverse area. So thinking about the influence that might have on the patients that you're seeing. So in terms of becoming a culturally competent doctor, gaining exposure to a lot of different cultures, religions, backgrounds, and improving your ability to adapt, whether that be adapting the way you're speaking to a patient, overcoming language barriers, taking into account a lot of their social history is something that you learn a lot just by virtue of being in that location at Imperial. And if you want to take more of a scientific spin on it, you can talk about how you are kind of interested in seeing how genetics and other socioeconomic factors might actually influence the way that patients present. So that side of things in terms of the location is probably something you can mention for Imperial. And in terms of the work-life balance aspect, you can talk about how there's lots of opportunity to take part in things that you enjoy across London, and that can help you maintain that balance and ensure that that relatively heavy workload of medical school doesn't overwhelm you. And that point can also link to the extracurriculars, talking about how meeting new people, getting involved in societies helps you maintain your interests and also help you maintain that work-life balance. So, Kieran, if you want to talk a little bit about this topic, you can mention a few points.
Yeah, I'd say like no matter what interest you have, I'm sure there's a society for it. And even if there isn't, you can kind of create your own. There's a lot of emphasis on students kind of having independence and kind of being innovators. And there's even an enterprise hub as well. And some of my friends have like created businesses as well and like med tech and stuff like that. And yeah, I feel like you can never get bored. And I think another point to emphasize is that like lots of people think, oh, like Imperial, like everyone's just like studies all the time, there's no fun and stuff. But like don't let that put you off. Like it's absolutely like cannot be further from the truth. Like it has like so much fun at Imperial. It kind of has like a work hard but play harder kind of culture where like you'll like do your work when you need to and then you like go out and have some fun. It's like kind of the vibe of Imperial. It's like don't let that put you off, I'd say. Like yes, people are passionate about their subjects and can be quite studious, but at the same time we do have a lot of fun. So yeah, that's what I'd say for that.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely work hard but play harder. The courses here are quite intense. Other courses, not really medicine so much, but a lot of other courses have exams throughout the year. So there might be sort of ebbs and flows in terms of how socially, active it is. However, medicine is probably one of the relatively more relaxed courses. So medics just have the most fun at Imperial, and it's a really, really positive environment to be in.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to emphasizing a bit more about course structure, we've already mentioned a few things, but there is some more detail that you can add if that is something that you're interested in. So, Karen,
yeah, sure.
Feel free to take it away.
So I guess in first and second year, there's like around 6 main modules. So POM is called stands for Principles of Medicine, and that's kind of like your basic biochemistry that kind of underlies kind of pathology and disease. It is a really kind of like difficult module, I'd say. Like everyone kind of doesn't really like it, I guess, but I think it's actually very fundamental and important to kind of understand the basics of kind of cellular biology. And then we have BRS, which stands for Bioregulatory Systems, and for that it kind of covers your kind of core specialties, so your respiratory medicine, your cardiology, your gastroenterology. So that's kind of the more like doctory kind of scientific part of the course. And then we also have this module called LMAP, which is like lifestyle medicine and prevention, and that kind of is about exploring kind of social determinants of health and factors kind of outside of patients' control that might influence their kind of approach to healthcare and their kind of compliance with medical treatments, things like that. And then we have CSI, which is kind of clinical scientific integration. And for that, we kind of have like kind of group-based, team-based learning discussions. And it's kind of like cover different cases about different conditions, like urinary retention, different types of fractures, stuff like that. And there's a couple of assessments of that you do with a team. And then PCH is your module where you essentially go on placement, basically. That's like the placement module where you go into different hospitals. So like it says, you have in year 1, you have an 8-week GP placement and a 2-week hospital placement. And then second year, you have an 8-week GP placement again, and also 2 hospital placements this time. So you really do get that kind of early clinical exposure right from the start. And then also have a CPA, which is kind of like a mini baby OSCE, where you get to just practice your clinical skills, to practice kind of doing them on patients and gaining confidence with kind of patient demeanor. And then for anatomy, in first year, you cover the anatomy of the head and the neck and the spine. And then for second year, you cover the anatomy of kind of the abdomen, like your tummy area, and then also your upper and lower limbs as well. And then now, like me, I'm in third year, and I have basically 3 8-week rotations. One in GP for 8 weeks, one in surgery for 8 weeks, and one in hospital, so a medicine placement for 8 weeks as well. So you get to kind of really dive into that kind of clinical doctor kind of vibe, I guess, and practice kind of really examining patients, doing procedures, things like that. And then next year in year 4, I'll be doing my integrated BSc, and there's lots of different choices for that. Like neuroscience and mental health, kind of an anesthetics one, an oncology one, so a cancer-based one. So it kind of gives you a bit of a break from medicine, and you can kind of explore some other different aspects of like kind of more scientific and research aspects of medicine. And like a lot of people do get kind of do like a big research project as part of this. And then for year 5 and 6, that's where you're kind of like preparing to become a doctor, kind of gearing up towards those final examinations. So that's again a lot of time in placement, and there's a few more modules there. You get to like an A&E block, pediatrics, psychiatry, obs and gynae. So you get to do a bit more of like specialist specialties that you might not get to do in third year and first year and second year as well. So yeah, I guess that's quite a lot to cover.
Yeah, so as you can see, that early clinical exposure is definitely there at Imperial. And personally, I think I really value it because it allows you to sort of develop that bedside manner, kind of understand how the wards function, and understand the role of different parts of the MDT, as well as the role of the GP within the community. So I think the way that it's structured is really, really beneficial to making you a really well-rounded doctor. And it means that when you get thrown into hospital placement in year 3, you're not completely, taken aback, and you kind of know what's going on. So it allows you to be more prepared for that, and also kind of, I guess, gives you a nice break from lectures, I suppose, as the time goes on. So developing a bit more on some other points you can speak about for why Imperial. We've spoken about the integrated learning approach in terms of having that real variety with lectures, group work, tutorials, and case-based learning. So tutorials, I know Oxbridge have this whole thing, tutorials, but Imperial, it's not that deep. We basically just have lectures, and then for the same topic, we have a smaller session. So say if the lecture is with the whole cohort of 360 or whatever, then the corresponding tutorial will be in your smaller group. So in the start of first year, you're allocated these small groups of 6, and that is within a wider group of sort of 90. So the year group is split into 4, and within those four groups, you have small groups of 6. And this group of 6, you become really close to effectively. You do a lot of exams with them, you do your placements with them sometimes, and your tutorials with them. So you sit in those groups, you discuss certain cases that could be associated with the lecture that you've just studied, and it allows you to go into more depth, ask questions, and really get a more solid understanding of that corresponding lecture topic. And thinking about the people who are actually teaching you, Imperial is obviously renowned for their research, but people don't really realize what this means. Obviously, Imperial is pumping out all this amazing cutting edge technology and research into kind of translating that into clinical practice. But then also the people who are teaching you are well-leading researchers and clinical experts. A lot of the people teaching you are actually doctors, so they have a lot of experience dealing with the stuff that they're teaching. They can kind of give you that nuance that maybe you won't learn in the books, but is kind of developed through research. So picking up on those little bits helps you become a really good doctor down the road. And then early patient contact, we've mentioned. The hospitals that you are allocated to are quite prestigious. So thinking about St Mary's Hospital, Charing Cross Hospital, Chelsea and Westminster, they all have some really, really good wards on there that are kind of top of their field. And then we spoke about the opportunity to really become a very culturally competent doctor through the patient population that you're exposed to. Kieran spoke about the intercalation options. So you're probably having a look at picking yours now, but there's a lot of variety in what is available to you. And as Kieran mentioned, it's an opportunity to get involved in some research, if that is anything that you're interested in. And then horizons and I explore. So in first year, it's optional, second year, it's mandatory. So you can either pick up a language or a more niche module, like there's some on like surgical innovation, there's some on AI. So there's quite a lot of variety in the horizons options. And this happens once a week for 2 hours. It's like a session that you do, and it allows you to really develop that thing on the side or an extra skill if that is something that you want to do as well. And we spoke about how it's got the most society, so some really niche ones if there's anything that you're interested in particular. And then Kieran also mentioned the enterprise hub. So Imperial Business School leads that management BSc in 4th year, but they also have this enterprise hub that you can get involved in if you are interested in developing any startups or getting involved in anything like that. So yeah, anything to add, Kieran, before we move on?
Yeah, I guess I feel like for iExplore, like at the time, like when we had to pick it, I was like, oh, this is gonna add to my workload. But I found it kind of refreshing because I got to like meet different people that do different courses, and like I did mine in surgical robotics and engineering, so I got to like use a robot, and like it was just really cool, like to just do something different, like outside of medicine every Monday. So yeah, some people do cooking as well. Like there's so many different options. So I feel like it's good, and like I feel like it encouraged you to kind of be like a well-rounded person and not just like a scientist thinking kind of diverse ways. Like some people do philosophy as well. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So, Kieran, if you want to speak about some societies that you've potentially gotten involved in.
Yeah, sure. So one of my main hobbies is taekwondo. So I do a lot of taekwondo at Imperial. It's twice a week. It's really good to kind of just relax, and as well, you get to meet, like I said, you get to meet people on other courses. I think the medics, because we like have our own campus and stuff. Sometimes it can feel like you're quite like separate from everybody else. So going to these societies allows you to kind of meet different people that are part of like the main wider college, but as well as like other kind of specific Imperial like medical related ones, for example, the oncology society, med tech, or even like an ICSM coding society as well. But yeah, I think no matter what your interest is, there will probably be it will probably be available to you at Imperial. And if not, then there is support to kind of support you to kind of explore that opportunity as well. So that's what I'm saying. So like no matter what you can think of, it will be there, and you can explore it at Imperial. So I recommend it from that aspect as well. So yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree. I spoke a little bit about play team earlier. That's something I've started doing this year, and I really recommend it. It's just so refreshing to kind of go onto those wards, do some volunteering. It doesn't, I wouldn't say it has immense medical benefit in terms of contributing to your course, but that is something that's so important to recognize. Not everything has to be towards becoming a doctor or medicine. It's so important to do things that really do kind of nurture your passions and develop your interests. So as Kira mentioned, taekwondo, I've mentioned play team, dance, literally anything you want, you can get involved in, and lots of opportunities to connect with people from other courses, either through sport and cultural societies as well. They're kind of Imperial as a whole, so there's no separation there between medic and non-medic, and that's also a really good opportunity to meet loads and loads of other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about cutting edge research being done by Imperial, we mentioned obviously the different sort of areas in which you can mention that in your interview. So I think I mentioned at the beginning, if there's anything in your work experience that particularly linked to something that Imperial is doing well. So for example, in my interview, I mentioned this smart heart project, obviously a while ago now, but Imperial were doing a smart heart project that basically helps you analyze cardiac MRIs using AI. So I mentioned that in my interview because it linked to my cardiology work experience. So something like that is just kind of demonstrating the fact that you've done your work experience, but you've also, you know, linked it to something that you're interested in or Imperial's doing, and just kind of demonstrate that depth in your thinking a bit more. So taking a look at if anything from Imperial links to your work experience is always a good shout, or if anything just kind of appeals to your interests. I know Imperial do a lot of stuff with tech and also with the National Heart and Lung Institute. It's pretty big. So anything like that. Yeah, Karen, anything to add on this?
Yeah, I guess as well, like, I don't know, one of the main things that Imperial kind of pioneered is this discovery of this hormone called kisspeptin. So I guess in your interview, maybe reference that as well. They might be quite impressed or interested if you kind of have an awareness of that. So maybe just research into kisspeptin. I can put it in the chat. It's like a kind of protein that's involved with like reproductive regulation, basically. So yeah, you can reference that too. They kind of like are obsessed with endocrinology here, so like hormones stuff like that. So you could maybe reference that in your interviews if you think that it applies to you and your experiences. So yeah, but I think don't try and like force it. Like if you aren't interested in Alzheimer's disease, don't mention Alzheimer's disease, as firstly it might probe you further, especially now that it's in person, that the doctors kind of have more scope to ask and have more freedom to ask whatever they kind of plead, I guess. I don't know, like more follow-up questions can be asked. So make sure to follow your interests. Don't try and force yourself into a certain hole or a certain niche. If you're not interested, then try and find something else that you're interested in that you can explore further from that scientific aspect, I'd say. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say, I guess. But yeah.
Yes, 100% agree with that. Please just ensure that you're being authentic and sticking to what you know and who you are, because those are those telltale signs they can always pick up on. So I'd say probably try and research things that you are confident about. Like if you don't know anything about kisspeptin and you don't care about kisspeptin, just don't even mention it. Is probably what I'd say. So yeah, definitely have a look on Imperial's websites to see if there's anything that links to your interests. Talking about anatomy, so there are three sort of different types of anatomy teaching that can happen at a medical school. Imperial do pro-section and a bit of virtual anatomy as well. So basically what happens is you have some pre-reading to do about just familiarizing yourself with that particular area that you're studying. Like for example, today we studied the arm. So we did some pre-reading on the arm and the muscles and the bones and whatever. So you can go in, have a look at those specimens that have already been dissected for you. It's very nice because during the small groups again that I mentioned at the beginning, those groups of 6, and you're with a tutor and they really just talk you through all the different aspects of that body part. And yeah, it's pretty good because sometimes I think with dissection, when you're actually dissecting it yourself, you can maybe not really preserve those anatomical structures as well as you need to actually examine them properly. So prosection allows you to actually observe them without being sort of reliant on your dissection skills per se. So really, really good. And then you also have access to complete anatomy, which is like a virtual, I guess, tool you can use to help visualize some aspects of anatomy as well to support your learning. So yeah, that's Imperial's anatomy teaching. I guess you could mention it as a pro or like as part of your why Imperial answer, talking about how it helps you really observe those detailed anatomical structures without performing dissection yourself. Therefore, you're not, so reliant on those dissection skills themselves. Karen, anything to add about anatomy?
Yeah, I'd say just like a lot of people sometimes kind of get really hyperfixated on like, or like I'm not dissecting it myself, or like dissection versus prosection. I'd say like don't overthink it. Like it's really not that deep. I think there's like a lot more important factors to think about when you're choosing your medical school. Like prosection is great, and like irrespective, you kind of still need to know the anatomy, and you'll get the enough teaching that you like need to know for your exams and for like to be a good doctor as well. So don't overthink it. If they do prosection, that's also just as good as dissection as well. I think personally prosection is better, but I guess it's up to interpretation or debate. But yeah, don't overthink it. Like it's really not that deep at all. So yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so now talking about sort of like day-to-day timetable of Imperial. Obviously, you mentioned it switches up quite a lot, which is, in my opinion, pretty nice. Yeah. In first year, you sort of split your time. In first and second year, you split your time between the Hammersmith campus at Charing Cross Hospital and the main Imperial campus in South Kensington. So in first year, roughly it's sort of 3 days South Kensington, 2 days Hammersmith, and that reverses. In second year, you have most of your time at Charing Cross Hospital and less time in South Kensington. So the average day is usually 9 to 5. In theory, you have Wednesdays 9 to 12. But when we say 9 to 5, that also includes online learning. So yeah, you might have like 9 to 10, then a few online things, then 2 to 3, right? So it allows you to kind of have those breaks. Some days are less heavy. Some days, as you can see on the timetable on the screen, are a bit more intense. So yeah, lots of variation, but it is pretty relaxed on the whole. I wouldn't say it's a super, super intense timetable. There are certain periods where it gets more intense because you're spending a bit more time revising when it gets closer to exams, but on the whole, very, very manageable, and you definitely have lots of time for, as we said, extracurriculars and, going out with friends, etc. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I'd say like obviously it's Imperial and like you are expected to do work, but the good thing about med in particular is that all the exams are like at the end of the year, so like May, June time. So you kind of have a lot of freedom to kind of like not do what you want per se during term, but like you don't have to like lock in from the start and like be like locked in. You can kind of like leave it a bit later, have a bit more fun, give yourself a bit more leeway to kind of have more freedom, join some new societies, try something new, and then before the exams, like a little bit before, just start to lock in. Like I think I think it's like more relaxed than you would expect it to be. Like as long as you kind of like show up to your lectures and like engage with the curriculum, like you'll likely pass the course. So that's what I'd say. Like there is time to have fun, basically, is what I want to emphasize. Like it's not just all work, 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 work. There is time to have fun, but at the same time, don't come and expect that you can just like not do any work and pass. Like you do have to study, but that's expected, honestly, at any medical school, really.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add to that, obviously, there's this huge misconception that I think Karen's mentioned about Imperial being very antisocial, very nerdy, but that is like literally not true. Like we have such a relaxed lifestyle compared to the other courses at Imperial. So our timetable's super chill. Our exams, as Karen mentioned, are right at the end. So lots of time to really have a good balanced lifestyle. No essays, nothing like that. So definitely a very, very, they take good care of you, I'd say, on this course. Yeah, lots and lots of time for fun.
I just love random pictures.
So obviously the area in which the campuses are located. So you have the South Kensington campus, which is right next to the museums, or Albert Hall. Lovely area. Yeah, just really nice place to study. Lots of study spaces on campus if that's something that you're worried about. And yeah, lots and lots of opportunities to go around London and have a nice time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, brilliant. So, Karen, if you want to start off talking about finances.
Yeah, I think obviously you are in London and like it's obviously going to be expensive, but I don't think that you should ever let kind of finances kind of deter you from applying to medical school. I know that for me personally, it was something that I was kind of worried about when I was applying to, but like I think just apply anyway and see what happens. I think the worst thing that you could do is like not apply and not choose a uni because you were worried when you could have got in and then kind of dealt with that when you got there. And just kind of emphasize there is support financially if you need any help. Obviously, you have your student finance England. Imperial also is very like generous. They have the biggest bursary out of any university, and that's up to £5,000 per year based on your household income. Imperial also offers some academic scholarships as well, based on if you do good in the admissions process, and there's a little bit of an essay competition for that as well. There might be other academic scholarships beyond Imperial that you could also apply to as well. In exams, if you like do well in them, you can also get prizes for that too. And like generally, you can just like do side hustles. Like I said, you don't have as much. Like you have more free time than you think, so you can be an outreach ambassador, be a part-time tutor as well. Like there's opportunities to make money like elsewhere as well. So I guess the main overarching point is don't let finances kind of put you off applying. Like do definitely apply. There's also a hardship bursary as well if you do encounter kind of a brief period of financial hardship as well too. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add about that as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just don't try and let it put you off. I hear loads of people kind of say, "Oh, I don't really want to apply to London unis because it's so expensive," but Imperial definitely has. Sorry, whoever's drawing on the screen, try to avoid that. Yeah, sorry, I was saying. Imperial definitely has lots and lots of ways to support you. They definitely don't want finances to come in the way of opportunities that you can access. And in terms of like actually living in London, yes, it is expensive in terms of rent, but there are lots of things that you can do to make your lifestyle cheaper. Like, yeah, it's kind of up to you how much you spend. But there are definitely lower like expenditure activities and higher expenditure activities. It's just about what you prioritize. So don't worry about it like you having to spend a lot of money to have a good time because that's definitely not the case. It's basically that point. So yeah, moving on to our Q&A. So we have sort of 6 minutes, but we can definitely go over a little bit if needed. I can see the chat is getting pretty full. So if we just start going through the questions, Karen, I'm not sure if you can see the chat as well. We'll go through some of them. So what resources do you recommend for interview prep? I mentioned the BBC Health News sort of area of their website at the beginning to just help guide from your current affairs preparation in terms of strikes, vaccines, etc. Imperial's website for the research aspect we've mentioned. And yeah, just sort of keeping on top of your current affairs, I think, is the main thing. Do you think it's important to include stats in your answer to back up what you're saying? Some people I know place loads of emphasis on memorizing all these stats. Personally, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. Like, I'd rather you have a good understanding of the basic topics than fill your brain with loads and loads of stats. Karen, not sure what you're taking on this. Yeah.
I don't think it's that like I don't think it's as impressive as you might think it might be. I think it's better to have a clearly well structured answer that kind of hits all the points and kind of dropping in random statistics that might not be particularly relevant to the question. And you're also focusing on maybe like revising the wrong things as you're focusing on kind of memorizing numbers, but your brain space could be used to kind of memorizing an example of teamwork or an example of from your work experience that could be kind of more relevant and more applicable to kind of wider questions and also wider interviews as well. But I think if you have a statistic and it's relevant, then definitely drop it in there as it might show a level of higher reading that you've done. But I don't think it's like really important. Like if you don't say a statistic, you're not getting in. Like it's not relevant that much if that makes sense. So that's what I'd say for that question.
Yeah, so, definitely the relevance. Like, please don't try and put things in because they're impressive objectively. It's so important that they're relevant to your answer because again, if you're just throwing it in for the sake of it, it definitely is quite obvious. So don't put an emphasis on stats if it's not relevant, basically. Okay, next one. How do you recommend approaching hot topic questions, and would you say it's a big priority for the Imperial interview? So we mentioned the ethical topics at the beginning that can come up. They have a station for ethics. So I think the way I recommend approaching them is, if it's controversial, try to give a relatively balanced answer. Just so if the interviewer is on the opposite side of the fence to you, you don't kind of make a bad impression there. But yeah, I think having that balanced perspective is so important. It shows kind of critical thinking, ability to recognize both sides of an argument, and also maintaining relatively neutral in controversial situations, which is pretty important for the interview as a whole. So yes, I'd say try and remain balanced. Try and make a wide variety of points. So if you're talking about strikes, yes, you can talk about the money and pay restoration, but also think about the impact on patients, think about work-life balance in terms of burnout, and kind of show breadth in your points that you're making to show that you actually understand the nuance and the complexity of the situation. Karen, what would you add?
I guess just to echo that, I think as well, like with the questions, maybe try and be critical of them, and like I think as well, like with these hot topic questions, be aware of your role and your kind of competencies. Like, are you a medical student? Are you a doctor? Are you a foundation year doctor? Is there potential hierarchy in this kind of ethical situation, stuff like that? I think being critical and being aware of the kind of situation that the question is framed around is really, really important, as that might affect your approach to the scenario, for example. So yeah, I'd say that. I think that was something that helped me like stand out in my interviews as well, was being critical of the question and like kind of breaking it down and finding all my keywords and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. If I end up with an offer from both Imperial and Oxford, how would you say to weigh them up? Completely up to you. All we can do is let you make an informed decision. So we're going to give you all the information on Imperial. Like, obviously we have them today. In terms of course structure, life at Imperial, and just the day-to-day experience. And if you think that the course structure at Oxford is something that you would enjoy more, and the location of Oxford, etc., that's just a decision you have to make yourself. So try and take into consideration all the different aspects, and just pick whatever priorities you have, basically, is what I'd say.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were asking as well, like about like the time pressure of Imperial, in particular in the MMI, and how to go around that. I'd say just like try and be as balanced as possible, like try and be as concise as possible. So when you're talking about like when you've used teamwork, don't make the backstory really long. Like, oh, the weather was really stormy that day. I was on my DAV expedition. Like we were hiking Mount Everest. That's just not relevant. Like stick to the point and be as concise as possible. And that's something that I did as well. I kind of ran out of time because I was just spending too much time on the backstory, and I didn't have as much time to reflect on stuff. So just be reflective, backstory concise, and kind of get to the point. Yeah, that's what I'd say for the time pressure. It is quite time pressure. You will feel kind of like an adrenaline rush, but I guess that's kind of like part of the excitement of doing the MMI. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Did you find getting accommodation after year one difficult? So obviously, probably quite far in the future for you guys. But to be honest, no. Everyone does end up somewhere, and Imperial does provide support if you can't find somewhere. So I'd say don't worry about that.
Some people are asking about commuting and like if that affects your like social life and if that's hard or if you have a different experience, stuff like that. I would say no. Like a lot of my friends, some of my friends do commute as well, and I feel like their experience isn't like hindered in any way. Like we're still friends as normal. And like yeah, I think I'd recommend maybe living out in first year just to have that experience of living out, and especially because everyone that gets the Imperial offer is guaranteed accommodation. So maybe just get the experience, and then after that maybe go home once you've got a more solid friend group. But I don't think that commuters have a particularly different experience to everybody else. If anything, they're saving money and getting like cooked meals themselves, and they don't have to cook themselves. So I think it's better. But yeah.
Definitely. I don't think that obviously everyone says this, and I do agree, like it is what you make it. So if you still make that effort to, engage in societies, engage with your friends, you're going to be completely fine. But if you sort of isolate yourself, then that is again an experience that is under your control to an extent. So I think, yeah, if you make an effort, you're so fine. What advice would you give if our interviews are tomorrow? First of all, good luck. Obviously, you're probably going to be feeling a little bit nervous, but just, really embody that confidence. embody that you have all the knowledge. It's just about portraying it in a way that can be pretty difficult to do in interviews, but you have had that preparation. You should feel pretty prepared and confident enough to formulate those answers. Imperial's questions aren't crazy. They just, test unique aspects and unique angles that you may not have thought about before, because at the end of the day, it is Imperial. So don't feel intimidated if you don't recognize the question. Just apply your knowledge, but it's all in there. It's about picking out the right bits and putting them in the right order to fit the question. So I think just be yourself, be super confident, be super calm, and just trust and believe you have all the points in there. Just putting them in the right order and saying them in the right way is what's really important.
Yeah, and I guess just generally, like, make sure to get an early night's sleep. Make sure you're well rested. You have a good, like, you've eaten enough food. You have a like, hearty breakfast. And I think just have confidence. Like, you probably revised really hard for this interview. You've probably done a lot of revision, a lot of preparation. Just have faith in that and just kind of back yourself. And that you're gonna do well in it. I think just be confident. Don't get intimidated. If you need a moment to think about the question and you're confused, ask for a moment to think. I think that's perfectly fine. And it's probably better to like think about it and formulate a more deep answer, as opposed to kind of making a superficial jump into conclusions and not kind of having really fully thought out about the kind of situation or the question itself. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Someone asked me if the teaching sessions can be in different campuses in the same day, and to be honest, the answer is no, unless you have teaching in Charing Cross in the morning and then Horizons in the evening. Because Horizons is probably going to be in the South Kensington campus, but they'll leave you more than enough time to get to the other campus for Horizons. Other than that, they're always going to be in the same campus on the same day.
Someone asked, how do we keep up with time pressure? I mean, I feel like, for me personally, I don't feel like there's a crazy amount of time pressure, really. Like, every day is quite different, but I feel like once you kind of get into the flow and the routine of, like, being at Imperial for, like a month, like, being after the first time, I'd say, like, it becomes kind of routine, and you kind of get used to it. So I don't believe, like, there's particular time pressure. I don't know, just be organised. You have to be quite organised, I'd say, to go here. Have a good awareness about your time, like, what your schedule is and stuff like that. But I don't think it's, like, too crazy. I feel like the hardest part is getting in, I'd say, and, like, once you're here, it's kind of okay, I'd say. Maybe a bit of adjustment in first year for the first time, but after that, it's kind of like a smooth ride, I guess. But I'm not sure if you like for experience as well. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I'd say as long as you obviously, to have the UCAT that you have and have the A levels that you have, you do have some form of academic integrity and work ethic to have got this far anyway. So as long as you don't completely throw that out the window once you get into Imperial, you should be completely fine. How would you improve your How would you improve your communication in speaking? Like using less filler words and sounding more confident? An element of it would be self-belief, like fake it till you make it. Because if you are nervous, then obviously you won't be. You're more inclined to be speaking super fast, speaking quietly, using filler words, losing track of your train of thought. So just calming those nerves in whatever way works for you is really important. Whether that's listening to your favorite song on the way in to the interview, or having your favorite breakfast, or meditation, deep breathing, whatever calms your nerves. Use that, because that is going to be really key to just avoiding a lot of those nervous tendencies or behaviors in the actual interview. Using less filler words, one thing that I recommend, and I think it sort of works for me, is if you're using filler words instead of using those, just take a break. Like, just stop talking and have that pause instead. And because that pause is going to feel so unnatural to you, it's just going to eliminate itself over time. So it is sort of a work in progress. It does take time. But even if you sort of record yourself talking and practicing your interview answers, watching them back, you'll realize some of the nervous tendencies you may not have realized you have before. So that will also help you be able to eliminate it. Yeah, I'd say just really try and embody that self-belief is the first step. And then those little things will eliminate themselves with practice over time. And to recognize those little tendencies, record yourself talking. Anything to add, Karen, on any of the questions?
Me, in my revision, if I said in the answer, I would just like stop the timer and then start the whole question again. And I kept doing it over and over again, and I would just get more and more frustrated. So it helped me to kind of like control myself, because I didn't want to keep saying the same answer again and again. So I don't know, it's a bit of an extreme way, but it did help a lot for my interviews. So yeah, could work for you guys maybe, but yeah.
Yes. Okie dokie. I think that is pretty much all of the
Someone said,
questions.
should they answer the question for the 4 or 5 minutes, or should they keep it shorter to leave time for follow-ups?
I'd say it's kind of like if you have enough solid points to make in those 5 minutes for those 3 questions without waffling, go ahead. But if you're gonna start waffling to fill the time, then just stop, to be honest. There's no need to fill the time because it probably will prompt you if there's anything you've missed. But yeah, don't allow time for follow-up questions intentionally if you have the points, because on a certain level it is a lot easier to talk about points that you have ready to go rather than deal with a follow-up question then and there. So yeah, it's kind of a toss-up. Obviously, please don't waffle and stop and then be prepared for the follow-up question. But if you have enough points, don't intentionally leave time for the follow-up question, if that makes sense. Hopefully that was pretty clear.
And I feel like you should just speak your mind, like what points you have, and if they want to see you in a certain direction or kind of change your thought process, they will just interrupt you. So I think it's better to just speak and make your solid points that you have in your mind, and then if you kind of run out of ideas, don't add more. You can just stop and say, "Oh, I don't really have anything else to add. Maybe if there's any follow-up questions that they have in mind for you, or something." But yeah, I wouldn't say to keep on talking and like purposely stop answering questions on purpose to avoid to anticipate a lot of questions that might not even be there, if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, definitely.
Maybe one question. I don't know. Someone said about data interpretation questions. I guess maybe we could just give a bit of advice about that, just because people have their interviews tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have any tips for the data interpretation station, particularly if it's something you're unfamiliar with? So I think what would be really important is to just, if the question is like describe the graph, then make sure you're hitting title, key, main trends, y-axis, x-axis. Just describe what you're seeing. And if it's describe the graph, don't interpret it, right? Just describe the basic trends. If they then say, explain why this is happening, then you can apply like, oh, maybe this increase in obesity is due to sedentary lifestyle, right? So it's very tempting to sort of mention the rationale behind something happening alongside the description of the trend, but try to separate the two. If the question's described, just keep it as it's gradually increasing, it's steadily declining, and keep it to that without offering a reason as to why this trend might be occurring. That would probably be consequent questions. So if it's something you're unfamiliar with, try and apply some hot topics knowledge. Chances are it might be about COVID, kind of obesity, something along those lines, right? So thinking about what factors contribute towards a disease, thinking about how those factors might be impacted by the changing sort of socioeconomic environment, changing lifestyle behaviors, is just kind of applying your knowledge to an unfamiliar scenario, which is kind of intimidating, but it's just about thinking what factors might contribute to this particular disease increasing in incidence or death rate increasing or whatever, right? Chances are it's probably going to be associated with some sort of socioeconomic factors, so probably a good one to consider there.
Yeah, I'd say from doing mock interviews with people, and also just in general from data interpretation, do not jump all over the graph. Make sure you're structured, ordered, title, type of graph, x-axis, y-axis, overall trend, and then any deviations or if it drops there then increases, explore those nuances as well. Yeah, just be trying to be as structured and organized as possible with your thought process is what I'd say. And in the MMI, with the timekeeping, there's a bell and a whistle and there'll be a timekeeper outside that will blow a whistle and ring a bell to tell you the different start times of each station and when to rotate and stuff. So it's very well organized is what I'd say for the in-person one. So yeah, I guess that kind of is the end of the webinar. Hopefully everyone found that useful. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. We have loads and loads coming up soon for other medical schools and dental schools, so keep an eye on that as well. And yeah, if you have any further questions, feel free to drop a message on those chats or those drop-ins. And best of luck, everyone, for your interviews.
Yeah, good luck, everybody, and hopefully this was useful. And maybe we'll even see some of you at Imperial